They thought you would break. They thought your silence meant defeat. But what they failed to understand is this. Your silence was the storm gathering. Your pain was sharpening you, and your patience was the weapon they never saw coming. You don't get even with people who don't value you. You rise so far above their reach that they'll have no choice but to look up in regret. That's the real revenge. Not loud, not messy, not dramatic, just undeniable transformation. See, the most powerful revenge is not payback, it's a glow up. It's becoming so strong, so focused, and so completely in love with your life that the people who once dismissed you now choke on the silence of your success. Not because you screamed louder, but because you didn't have to say a word. Your results said everything. People who don't value you are teaching you a lesson. They are telling you exactly where not to invest your energy again. And believe me, that is a gift. It might hurt now, but soon you'll realize they were a stepping stone. They pushed you into your own greatness. They showed you what you're no longer available for. Because when you truly start valuing yourself, you become dangerous to those who once took you for granted. They didn't see it coming, did they? Your silence, your calm, your disappearance. They thought it was weakness. But behind closed doors, something powerful was happening. You were transforming. You weren't reacting not because you didn't care, but because you were evolving. While they were talking, you were working. While they were laughing, you were healing. While they were busy underestimating you, you were quietly rebuilding every shattered piece of yourself into something unrecognizable. They thought you had disappeared, but in truth, you were preparing for a comeback that didn't need an announcement. That's the real revenge, becoming the version of yourself they can no longer access, let alone destroy. People often misunderstand silence. They think silence is surrender. But silence is a choice. It's a decision not to participate in the chaos anymore. It's stepping away from the need to be validated, defended, or explained, because when you start transforming, you realize you don't owe anyone a preview. You're not here to prove them wrong. You're here to prove yourself right. And the version of you they dismissed is gone. Not because you lost yourself, but because you found who you were always meant to be. Transformation doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens when no one's watching. It happens at 3 a.m. when you're tired of being broken. It happens when you look at yourself in the mirror and say, enough. It happens when you shut off the noise, when you stop chasing people, and when you stop begging for space in lives that never saw your worth. In that quiet storm, you rise. Not with rage, but with purpose. Not to seek revenge, but to reclaim yourself. That is the most powerful thing you can do, to grow so fiercely that those who once hurt you are no longer even relevant to your journey. You weren't weak when you loved them. You weren't foolish when you trusted. You weren't wrong when you gave chances. That was your heart. That was your light. But now your light is focused inward. Now your strength is rooted in solitude. Now your presence is a privilege, not a right. You don't throw shade. You cast light so bright that their shadows disappear on their own. You don't go back to remind them of what they lost. You go forward to remind yourself of what you've gained. Self-respect, peace, clarity, power. People who once made you feel small, who ignored your needs, who mocked your dreams, will one day see your name and feel the silence of your absence louder than any words you ever spoke. They'll see the glow and wonder where it came from, but you'll know it came from the nights you didn't quit, from the mornings you chose to show up, and from the days you kept going without applause. It came from the work you did in the dark. That's the kind of transformation that turns pain into power. They don't get to witness the rebirth. They don't get to cheer for the version of you that they never believed in. That's the price they pay for not valuing you. You owe them nothing. No update, no explanation, no warning. Your life becomes your response. Your growth becomes your revenge, and your peace becomes your prize. They thought they knew your limits. They thought they had you figured out, but they only knew the version of you who hadn't discovered their worth. They knew the one who tolerated, who forgave too quickly, who showed up even when empty. But that version is gone. In its place stands someone who no longer seeks permission to shine, who no longer entertains disrespect, and who no longer settles for being half seen. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them scroll through your life and see everything you built without them, not in bitterness, but in power, not in revenge, but in resurrection. Because what you've become is the greatest response you could ever give. And the best part, you didn't have to destroy anyone to get here. You just had to rebuild yourself. Quietly, relentlessly, completely. There is a moment in life when you realize that no matter how much you explain, some people will never understand you. Not because you're too complicated, not because your intentions aren't clear, but because they've already decided who you are in their minds. They've created a version of you that suits their own narrative, and no matter what you say, they're not listening. That's the hard truth. You're trying to reach people who are committed to misunderstanding you, and it's draining the life out of you. Every word you speak to defend yourself feels like shouting into a void, because deep down, you know they don't want to understand. They want to win. They want control. They want to keep you in a box you've already outgrown. The more you try to explain yourself to the wrong people, the more you end up questioning your own truth. You begin to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you are too sensitive, too much, too different. But you're not. You're just giving too much access to people who don't deserve to hold that kind of power over you. It's not your job to fix their perception. It's your job to live in your truth, no matter who chooses to misunderstand it. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need peace. And sometimes peace comes from walking away from conversations that only exist to distort your words. It comes from realizing that people who truly care will try to understand you, and those who don't never will, no matter how carefully you explain. Your energy is sacred. Your voice is powerful. Stop wasting it on people who've already decided to misinterpret everything you say. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes from knowing your worth without needing to announce it, from staying rooted in your truth without needing to defend it. When you stop trying to explain yourself to people who don't see you, you free yourself to become someone who doesn't need to be seen by everyone. You shift your focus inward. You stop seeking validation from the outside and start building confidence from within. You've spent too long arguing with people who aren't listening. You've sacrificed your peace trying to earn approval from people who only showed up to challenge your identity. It's time to let that go, not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. You deserve more than to spend your days shrinking, twisting, and bending yourself just to fit into someone else's limited view of who you are. You deserve relationships where understanding flows naturally, where communication feels like connection, not combat. Some people are addicted to conflict. They don't want resolution, they want power. And the more you engage with them, the more they feed off your reactions. That's why detachment is so powerful. That's why silence becomes your strength, not because you've given up, but because you've risen above it. Because you've finally understood that some battles aren't worth fighting, especially the ones that require you to abandon your own peace just to be heard. It's not weakness to walk away from chaos. It's wisdom. It's maturity. It's emotional intelligence. You stop trying to convince people of your value and you start living in it. And that's when everything changes. That's when you attract the right people, the ones who see you without needing an explanation. That's when you start building a life based on clarity, not confusion, on truth, not distortion. When you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you take your power back. You stop playing a role in someone else's play and start writing your own script. You stop letting their confusion define your clarity. You stop living in defense mode and start moving forward with intention. Your peace is too precious to be traded for temporary validation. Your voice is too valuable to be wasted on deaf ears. You don't need to make them understand. You need to understand that not everyone is meant to walk with you. Some are only there to teach you what you will never tolerate again. And the more you try to explain yourself to the wrong ones, the longer you delay the arrival of the right ones. Let go of that need. Let go of the urge to be understood. Stand in your truth and let your peace speak for itself. The ones who are meant to walk with you will hear it clearly, no explanation needed. There comes a point where you realize the energy you've been pouring into others has left you empty. You've been showing up for people who don't notice your presence, giving your time to people who don't respect it, and trying to prove your worth to those who were never qualified to measure it. The truth is, your energy is not infinite. Every minute you spend trying to convince someone to see your value is a minute stolen from your purpose. And when you finally recognize that, everything changes. You stop giving people discounts on your energy. You stop explaining, justifying, and pleading. Instead, you start protecting your space like your life depends on it, because it does. You can't continue giving your peace away to people who treat your presence like an option. You can't keep letting others drain your spirit while you stand there smiling, pretending you're fine. You're not fine. You're exhausted. Emotionally, mentally, and spiritually exhausted. Not because you don't care, but because you've cared too much about the wrong things. It's time to redirect that care, that energy, that love inward. It's time to focus not on proving your value, but on protecting your value. Because if you don't protect your peace, no one else will. There's a quiet revolution that starts when you begin choosing yourself. It's not loud. It doesn't look like revenge or retaliation. It looks like saying no more often. It looks like walking away from conversations that go in circles. It looks like turning down invitations that feel more like obligations. It looks like not responding to every message, every insult, every attempt to draw you back into the drama. It looks like peace, and peace is power. When you stop chasing people who don't see your worth, you create space for people who do. When you stop explaining yourself to people who twist your words, you start hearing your own voice more clearly. When you stop letting people who don't value your time have access to your life, you begin to move with intention. That's the shift. That's when life starts to open up. That's when things begin to align. Not because the world changed, but because you changed your direction. You're no longer available for relationships that feel like work without reward. You're no longer emotionally accessible to people who leave you feeling unseen. You're no longer pouring yourself into cups that never pour back. That's what it means to protect your energy. It means being ruthless about your peace. It means being unapologetic about your standards. It means understanding that your emotional health is not a charity, it's a responsibility. People will call you selfish. Let them. They're used to the version of you that overgave, overexplained, and overstayed. They're not used to this new you. The one who walks away when it's no longer healthy, the one who doesn't respond to disrespect, the one who puts themselves first without guilt. That's not selfish. That's survival. That's growth. That's necessary. The most dangerous version of you is the one who protects their energy. Because now you're no longer distracted. Now you're no longer dependent on their validation. Now you're operating from a place of clarity. You see who's for you and who's just using you. You see which connections elevate you and which ones deplete you. And with that clarity comes confidence. The kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. It just moves differently. It says no with ease. It walks away without fear. It chooses peace over chaos every single time. Protecting your energy means letting go of guilt. You're not responsible for fixing broken people. You're not responsible for carrying the emotional weight of those who refuse to grow. You're responsible for your life, your dreams, your healing. And you can't do that when you're constantly distracted by people who don't value your presence. Cut the cords, reclaim your time, pour your energy into things that make you stronger, not smaller. It's okay to outgrow people. It's okay to change the rules. It's okay to protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. Peace is not a luxury, it's your foundation. Without it, everything crumbles. But when you guard your energy, you start to build a life that reflects your worth. And in that life, there's no room for anything that doesn't serve your growth. There's something undeniably powerful about a person who doesn't react, doesn't retaliate, and doesn't try to prove a point. They just disappear into their work, their healing, and their growth. While everyone else is busy talking, gossiping, or throwing shade, they're busy building. They don't waste time seeking revenge because their life is the revenge. Their peace is louder than any argument, their silence cuts deeper than any insult, and their success becomes the answer to every lie, every betrayal, every underestimation. That's the best kind of revenge, the one that doesn't involve noise, conflict, or drama. It's quiet, intentional, and unstoppable. When someone disrespects you, devalues you, or overlooks you, the first reaction most people have is to respond, to speak up, to defend their name. But when you understand your worth, you no longer feel the need to prove anything. You become a master of silence, not because you're afraid, but because you've learned that not everything deserves your attention. You've learned that peace isn't just a state of mind, it's a weapon that protects your focus, your progress, and your emotional clarity. The ones who hurt you expect a reaction. They expect you to spiral, to break, to collapse under the weight of their absence or betrayal. But when you don't give them that satisfaction, when you keep rising in silence, it confuses them, it disturbs them, because they realize they didn't break you. They awakened you. And now you're unstoppable. You're not clapping back. You're not chasing explanations. You're simply evolving silently, fiercely, consistently. There's a fire that comes from choosing growth over vengeance. You start focusing on your craft, your goals, your mindset. You start channeling all that pain into something powerful. Every step forward becomes a statement. Every achievement becomes a message. You don't have to tell them you're winning. They'll see it. And when they do, it will speak louder than anything you could have ever said. Your progress becomes the proof. Your glow becomes the reminder. Your presence becomes the realization of everything they lost. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means discipline. It means choosing your battles. It means preserving your energy for what truly matters. You stop participating in the games. You stop lowering yourself to the level of people who can't handle your presence. You start walking with purpose, eyes forward, heart unshaken. That is power. Not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that masters itself. You become more dangerous when you choose silence, because now no one knows your next move. They don't know what you're working on. They can't predict your steps. All they see is the results, the transformation, the elevation. That's when you become untouchable, not because you're hiding, but because you're too focused to be distracted. You're too healed to be triggered. You're too busy creating a life that reflects your growth to care about people who tried to keep you small. Success that's born from silence has a different kind of weight. It carries every lesson, every heartbreak, every moment you wanted to give up but didn't. It becomes a symbol of resilience. And people who once doubted you will try to find their way back, not because they've changed, but because your light now exposes what they lacked. But you won't need to say a word. Your presence will say it all. You've outgrown the need to be seen by those who refuse to see you. You've stepped into a version of yourself that no longer needs revenge because you've replaced the need to prove with the desire to evolve. The world doesn't need to hear your side of the story. It needs to witness your transformation. It needs to see what happens when a person stops responding and starts building, when a person walks away from noise and leans into growth, when a person chooses silence not as surrender, but as strategy. The people who hurt you will hear your silence. The people who doubted you will see your rise. And the people who didn't value you will feel the absence of your energy. And that absence will be louder than anything you could have ever said. There comes a time in your life when staying the same becomes more painful than the risk of changing. You realize that the version of you that kept shrinking to fit into small places, that kept accepting less just to feel wanted, that kept tolerating what broke your soul is no longer welcome in the life you're trying to build. You can't hold on to your old identity and expect a new future. You can't become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you used to be. Growth demands that you cut off the parts of yourself that were born from survival, pain, and fear. It's not about rejecting your past. It's about no longer letting it lead you. The truth is, not everyone gets to go with you to the next level. That includes versions of yourself. The version of you that begged to be chosen, the version of you that stayed silent to keep the peace, the version of you that doubted your worth every time someone didn't show up, that version was necessary. It got you through some dark chapters, but it's not the one who will thrive in the next chapter. The next version of you needs bolder energy, sharper boundaries, deeper self-respect. And that only happens when you consciously decide to let go of the habits, beliefs, and attachments that no longer serve your highest self. Transformation feels like grief, because it is. You're grieving who you used to be, the identity you wrapped yourself in for years. The patterns that felt familiar, even though they were toxic, the comfort zones that kept you small but safe. That's why it's hard, because part of you wants to grow, but another part fears what you'll lose in the process. You'll lose people. You'll lose routines. You'll lose your old sense of normal. But what you gain in return is worth every bit of discomfort. You gain freedom. You gain self-awareness. You gain the power to walk into any room without needing anyone's permission to exist. The people who are meant to walk with you in your next chapter will not require you to shrink. They will not punish you for choosing yourself. They will not guilt you for setting boundaries. And the ones who fall away as you rise weren't rooted in truth. They were connected to your wounds. Your healing disconnects you from what was never real love in the first place. That's the cost of elevation. You can't fly while dragging dead weight, and you can't be reborn without letting parts of you die. It's okay to outgrow your old self. It's okay to wake up one day and decide you want more peace, more clarity, more purpose. You don't need permission to evolve. You don't need anyone to understand why you're no longer the same. Growth isn't about making others comfortable. It's about becoming the person you were always meant to be before the world told you who to be, how to act, and what to tolerate. You owe it to yourself to stop playing small just because people around you are afraid of your light. There's no revenge more powerful than showing up as your healed, whole, unapologetic self. That version of you doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't lower their standards just to be accepted. That version owns their voice, honors their boundaries, and walks in rooms with quiet confidence. And it all starts with cutting off who you were. It starts with looking in the mirror and saying, I deserve better than the version of me who keeps settling. You can't step into greatness while clinging to comfort. You can't evolve if you're still entertaining what once broke you. Every time you choose yourself, you're telling the universe you're ready for more. Every time you let go of something that no longer aligns, you create space for something that does. And every time you shed an old belief, an old habit, an old identity, you get closer to your truth. That's the process. That's the journey. And though it's not easy, it's worth it, because the person you become after letting go of who you were is stronger, wiser, freer, and completely Sometimes the greatest act of power is not retaliation, not confrontation, not even explanation. It's elevation. Rising above what was meant to destroy you is the loudest answer to anyone who ever doubted you, betrayed you, or treated you like you didn't matter. When you stop giving people the reaction they expected and instead give them the silence of your absence and the thunder of your success, you reclaim your power. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop engaging in the noise and start focusing on your next move. That kind of discipline is rare. That kind of strength is transformational because while they're still stuck in the same games, you're outgrowing every level they tried to trap you on. People who don't value you expect you to crumble. They expect you to stay stuck, to be obsessed with what they did, to keep trying to win their validation. But when you choose to grow in silence, when you keep moving without announcing your plans, when you start focusing on building a better life instead of proving a point, you become unpredictable. You become someone they can't control anymore. And nothing disturbs the people who tried to break you more than realizing they no longer have access to your energy, your mind, or your presence. This is where your power begins, not in trying to get even, but in getting focused. Focused on healing, focused on creating, focused on transforming. You start pouring into yourself the energy you use to waste trying to be enough for others. You become your own source of validation. You set goals so big that the people who left you will only hear about them in the form of headlines, achievements, and stories they'll tell other people as if they knew you. And the truth is, they didn't know you, not the real you. They only knew the version of you that tolerated being unseen. That version is gone now, replaced by someone who is no longer chasing closure, but chasing greatness. It's not revenge when you level up, it's evolution. You stop arguing about your worth and start living it. You stop reacting to petty drama and start responding with discipline. Every workout, every late night working on your dream, every time you choose to walk away instead of argue, that's a statement. That's your power speaking. And the best part is, it doesn't require an audience. You're not growing to show them. You're growing because it's what you owe to yourself. People will start to notice, not because you told them to, but because they'll feel the shift. The way you carry yourself will be different. The way you speak, walk, and move. It'll all reflect a new standard. And those who once ignored your presence will now feel your absence. They'll wonder what happened. They'll wonder how you became so powerful. But the truth is, you were always powerful. You just finally decided to stop giving your power away. They say the best revenge is living well, but it's more than that. The best revenge is becoming so locked in on your purpose, so deeply connected to your truth, that you stop needing any revenge at all. Because you realize they didn't break you, they built you. They gave you the clarity to know what you'll never tolerate again. They taught you how to stand alone. They pushed you into a version of yourself you might never have discovered without their rejection, their disrespect, their absence. Now you rise not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that you were always right to believe in more. More peace, more success, more self-respect. Your future doesn't need an explanation. It needs action. It needs you to stay focused, to stay disciplined, to stay quiet about your plans, but loud with your results. That's the difference between people who stay stuck and people who grow. One is fueled by emotion, the other by purpose. Your purpose is louder than their opinion. Your growth is louder than their judgment. Your future is louder than your past. And when you choose to elevate, you don't just rise. You inspire. You show others what it looks like to stop chasing people and start chasing purpose. And that ripple effect is more powerful than any revenge you could ever plan, because now you've become someone they can't reach, can't predict, and definitely can't stop.